You can come on this side if you want to. Well,
You need to adjust your facial awareness.
we should have started already. Sit down. Sit
Hey everybody, Shabbat Shalom. We're going to start a couple of minutes late because we're just trying to make sure that the Zoom works. So for the folks watching at home, we want them to be clued in. So give us a moment, talk amongst yourselves, not like you weren't already, and we'll get going in a second.
So he says talk and you all stop? Come on.
I think what they call this is reverse heckling.
Okay, don't stop talking. And that's how you get them quiet. That's amazing. Well, let's sing something while we wait. How's that? Page 86 in Shir HaNeshama. Hine ma tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. How good it is! How good it is! How sweet it is! How sweet it is to be together on this day. How good it is! How good it is! How sweet it is! How sweet it is to be together on this day. Hine ma tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Shalom aleichem, salam aleikum. Shalom aleichem, salam aleikum. Shalom aleichem, salam aleikum. Shalom aleichem, salam aleikum. How good it is! How good it is! How sweet it is! How sweet it is to be together on this day. How good it is! How good it is! How sweet it is! How sweet it is to be together on this day. Hine ma tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Welcome. It's great to see such a wonderful crowd. I do want to, in particular, welcome those members of the Women of Kol Ami who are being installed as a new board this evening. We really appreciate you bringing, looks like friends and family and neighbors and random passers-by you met on the street. Absolutely wonderful. and we will actually hand over temporarily to Simon Rosenblatt, one of our wonderful board members who, like other board members, has been sharing personal reflections. And Simon, it might be called the Life and Times of Simon Rosenblatt. This is the final installment in this particular context.
Indeed. Thank you, Rabbi, and welcome home. Welcome as well to all who have joined us for Shabbat worship, whether in person or via one of our streaming platforms. Some of you may have already heard me speak since we adopted this new form of board member Shabbat representation. But I ask for your indulgence while I take a few moments of personal privilege as I address you from my last time as a member of the Kol Ami board, after having done this well more than 200 times in this building. I don't expect to ever be in this position again, since we don't have anything like emeritus board members, unlike at least 2 other organizations I'm associated with. In our case, only past presidents enjoy special status, which is probably as it should be. What makes this night different? This night marks the end of our fiscal year and membership year. For many businesses, it marks the end of their fiscal year. In the Jewish world, it often marks the time of clergy transitions, as indeed is the case for us. For me, this evening marks the end of 36 years of almost continuous service on the boards of Southern Arizona synagogues. First, 16 years as the secretary and lay leader at Temple Kol Hamidbar in Sierra Vista, and then after a break of 2 years, 20 years on the boards of Temple Emmanuel and Kol Ami Synagogue, which ends now. I first attended services in this building in 1973, 50 years ago. I should note that Shabbat evening services back then started at 8 o'clock. I was living in Sierra Vista at the time, so it was a long time before I became involved in any synagogue role here in Tucson. In the current case, I have Dana Adler to thank, or maybe to blame, for getting me involved. I had thought that I first met her in 2000, but she recently reminded me that we actually met first in 1996 at a parlor meeting with Rabbi Jeffrey Ronald. By 2003, she had me in charge of the bylaws, a role that I retained for more than a decade. And as of July 2003, she had me on the board of Temple Emmanuel. After 1 term as a director, I became the secretary for 3 terms, 6 years. Having gone full circle 2 years ago, I again became the secretary for Temple Emmanuel and for Kol Ami as well. I was well trained to be a secretary. In addition to the aforementioned 16 years in Sierra Vista, long ago I was the secretary for a chapter of the Society of American Military Engineers, and now I'm also the secretary for my homeowners association. Speaking of Dana, I'd like to pay special tribute to those of my friends who are, were, or will be synagogue presidents. It can be a rewarding leadership experience, but it can also be a time-consuming, thankless position. In 1986, when I attended one of my first UAHC meetings before the UAHC became the URJ, at Temple Solel in Paradise Valley, I told myself that I would never allow myself to be a synagogue president. Despite opportunities to have become a president, I never reconsidered my decision. I hope that during my 36 years of synagogue board service, I was helpful to the many presidents I served under. But I'm still glad that I was never in that position myself. And of course, I absolutely have to thank my wife, Louise, for putting up the demands of my board service. All of this is not to say that I won't miss being actively involved in the life of the synagogue. I'll certainly miss it. But perhaps the time has come for a life that doesn't have to revolve around board meetings and board actions and meeting dates. Going forward, I hope to find another place where I can direct my time and effort, because I'm not yet ready for a rocking chair. The people of Kol Ami, and before that Temple Emmanuel and Temple Kol Hamidbar, are and have been my community, and in effect, my extended family for more than 4 decades. For that reason and others, I've long felt both a need and an obligation to attend services regularly, an obligation as a member of the board and a need as a member of the congregation. As many of you know, I do not miss services without good reason, and I expect that to continue. In fact, the last time that I missed a Shabbat or festival service in this building was in October of 2021, when I attended the Shabbat morning service at Congregation Anshe Yisrael. To those of you who will constitute the Kol Ami board beginning tomorrow, I wish you luck, strength, and patience. You will need all of those and more to help make our synagogue the best that it can be. You will certainly need the support of our members. With the departure from the board of many of our trustees who have been members of the board of one of our legacy congregations, with the seating of a new board, and with the retirement of Rabbi Lacham, we take one more giant step into a new future. That future can be bright, but making it so will be up to you and to our members. And once again, I want to thank Louise for putting up with the demands on my time over these past 2 decades and during the preceding decade when the demands came from the UAHC and Temple Kol Ami Bar. From our tradition, I offer chazak, chazak v'nichazek. Be strong, and let's indeed strengthen each other. And with that, once more, on behalf of the Kol Ami Synagogue leadership and staff, I wish you a Shavua Shel Briut, Osher, Ahava v'Shalom, a week of health, happiness, love, and now as much as ever, the blessing of true shalom, wholeness, contentment, and peace. And as I always try to say, please remember to patronize your Judaica shop operated by the women of Kol Ami. Your purchases support our religious school and the Madrichim program. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, Simon. Thank you as ever for all your love and devotion which you bestow on us in community service. And I know you're not disappearing anywhere. I will see you at services tomorrow morning. Going to invite the current Women of Kol Ami board to meet us down front to light the Shabbos candles. The candle blessing can be found on page 4.
In the beginning there was darkness, and the Spirit of God hovered over the darkness. Spirit of God hovered over the darkness.
Creation begins.
Spirit of God hovered over the darkness. Then God created light, and the work of creation was begun.
As we kindle the Sabbath lights, we remember the majesty of creation and rejoice in our ability to be one with creation.
Light is a symbol of warmth and unity. It binds us together with Jews of all lands who are kindling the Sabbath lights.
These Sabbath candles give light to all who behold them. So may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us.
We light these candles to welcome this sacred day of joy and rest. As the candlelight illuminates us, we pray that we too may become a light in the darkness.
We pray for the spiritual well-being of our families, friends, congregation, community, and world. With the lighting of these candles, we proclaim this faith holy, and we proclaim this time holy.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'hadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Shabbat Shalom.
We continue on the bottom of page 5.
לכו נרננה, לכו נרננה, לכו נרננה לאדוני. לכו נרננה, לכו נרננה, לכו נרננה לאדוני. נריע נריע לצור אישנו, נקדמה פניו בתודה. נריע נריע לצור אישנו, בזמירות נריע לו. לכו נרננה, לכו נרננה, לכו נרננה לאדוני. לכו נרננה, לכו נרננה, לכו נרננה לאדוני.
Foot of page 7. We turn our attention towards a joyous ceremony of happy lovers. Our Sabbath bride enters our lives at this moment, and we are overwhelmed by her beauty, her gentleness, and her love for us. The Sabbath bride is resting in every heart. We smile softly as she enters. We breathe easily as we welcome her. We close our eyes, feel her gentle kiss upon our brow. Page 8.
לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. שמור וזכור בדיבור אחד, השמיענו אל המיוחד. אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, לשמו תפארת ולתהילה. לך דודי, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי מקור הברכה מראש מקדם נסוכה. סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. לך דודי, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. התעוררי, התעוררי, כי באורך ומאורי, אורי אורי שיר דברי. כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה. לך דודי, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. We rise to welcome Shabbat. בואי בשלום, העטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואי חלה, בואי חלה. לך דודי, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה.
be seated. On page 11. What was but moments ago the substance of our life has now become memory. What we did must now be woven into what we are. For on this day we shall not do but be.
We are to walk the path of our humanity, no longer ride unseeing through a world we do not touch and only vaguely sense.
This is what Shabbat must be for us, not to tear the world apart, not to wrestle with time, but to let warmth and care and light come forth from deep within ourselves.
Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
V'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael bagala bagala u'v'zman kariv v'yimeru Amen. Yehi shmei Rabba mevorach leolam u'l'olmei olmaya yitbarach yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal Shemei de Gurisha Brichu Le'ela min kol birchata V'shirata Tushbechata V'nechemata Damiran Be'alma Ve'imeru Amen. We rise on page 12 for the Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach Baruch Adonai HaMevorach HaMevorach Le'olam va'ed.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim, v'chokhmah poteach sha'arim, u'bitfunah meshaneh itim, u'machalif et hazmanim, u'mesader et hakochavim b'mishmoratehem b'rakia kirtzono. Boyer yom v'layla, kolel or mipnei choshech v'choshech mipnei or, u'ma'avir yom u'mevi layla, u'mavdil ben yom u'ben layla, Adonai tzavaot shemo. El chai v'kayam tamid yimloch aleinu le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'ma'ariv aravim. The foot of 13 we say together, everlasting love, you offered your people Israel by teaching us Torah and commandments, judgments and laws. Therefore, eternal our God, when we lie down and when we rise up, we will meditate on your teachings. We will rejoice in your Torah and your mitzvot forever. For they are our life and the length of our days, and we will meditate on them day and night. May we always be aware of your love for us. We praise you, Adonai, who shows love to your people Israel and all the world.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto, Le'olam Va'ed. If it is your tradition, you may be seated. We continue with the Ve'ahavta. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובישעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Middle of 15. All this we hold to be true and sure. You alone are our God, and we are Israel, are called to your service. We are witnesses and participants in God's covenant for justice and peace. You do wonders without number, marvels that pass our understanding.
You
keep our feet from faltering. You help us survive our daily struggles. You did wonders for us in the land of Egypt, miracles and marvels in the land of Pharaoh.
We are free to lift up the fallen and bring healing to those suffering in our midst.
When Moses, Miriam, and the people stood at the shore of Freedom's Sea, they sang this song to you with great joy.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה. מלכותך ראו בניך, בוקע ים לפני משה ומרים, זה אלינו ואמרו, זה אלינו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. יאי לי 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 לי
So before we sing V'shamru on page 17, just by way of explanation, during the chorus, the refrain, you'll see some people in the sanctuary stand up and twist around. And for those who've had particularly hard week, they'll just raise their arm and just go like that, which is totally fine as well. The explanation we often give to this, it's a reminder of the Talmudic tradition that if all the Jews in the world keep Shabbat for 2 Shabbats in a row, then the Messiah will come, time of total peace and perfection without war, hunger, or poverty. And so we figure if everybody twists during V'shamru, then maybe something good will happen from it. Now, you don't need to take me literally. The whole point of this is that we're trying to bring a sense of unity amongst the Jewish people. It's to remind us that we're all connected. And so that if one of us acts, that's wonderful. But if we act as a community, that's powerful.
page 17.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי 6 ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש, שבת ויהי נפש, שבת ויהי נפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
We rise for the Amidah on page 18.
אדוני שפתי תפתח ופי יגיד תהילתך. Eternal God, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your glory. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Leah, Elohei Rachel, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע. מחכה חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים. צומח נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה. ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל, ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל.
אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה.
ברוך אתה אדוני,
האל הקדוש.
We continue silently through page 24, either standing or sitting.
Shalom bimroma, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu. Oseh shalom bimroma, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu. Oseh shalom bimroma, hu ya'aseh Shalom aleinu, yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, oseh shalom bimroma. Shalom aleinu, oseh shalom bimroma, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, oseh shalom bimroma, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael.
So the incoming president of the Women of Colamy is Adrienne Flynn. I've misplaced her. There you are. Okay.
She's sitting behind.
That makes sense sitting next to Tom. Yeah, I see that now. Why don't you come forward and give us a few words of Torah?
Okay. Good evening. When writing this drash, I went about it kind of backwards. I knew what I wanted to say, so I just had to find it in the Torah portion. And I hit the jackpot, a double portion. We have a cow, a talking donkey, snakes. Both Miriam and Aaron pass away. Moses strikes a rock in disobedience and may not enter the promised land. There's so many good ideas here, but of course, guess what? I went with a talking donkey. A very brief recap. Balak, the king of Moab, hires the prophet Balaam to curse the Israelites. Balaam heads out on his donkey. God sends an angel with a sword. The donkey sees the angel and swerves off the path. Balaam does not see the angel and beats the donkey. This continues to happen until the donkey lays down and says, "What have I done to you that you have beaten me these 3 times?" As the conversation continues, Balaam finally sees the angel with the sword and ultimately realizes he's on the wrong path, does the right thing, and ultimately blesses the Israelites. As I read through commentaries, I watched a very cute cartoon video by Rabbi Andy Shapiro Katz. Rabbi Katz says that Balaam and the donkey are not 2 beings, but one, representing the intellect and the gut. Balaam thought he was on the right path, but God, or his gut, knew that he was not. Also, the whole angel, God, donkey time span allowed Balaam the time to see the angel and to realize he was on the wrong path. Hold that thought. I am about to be installed as president of Women of Kol Ami. If my parents of blessed memory were here, they would say, "How in the world did that happen?" Some of you have heard this story. When I was about 20, I told my mother that Judaism was a mafia plot. Still in my 20s, one day I called my uncle, the rabbi, on Yom Kippur, and I asked him what he was doing. Not my finest hour. And until 2019, I was never even a member of a sisterhood, and now president. How did that happen? Like Balaam, I think I knew in my gut that I was kind of on the wrong path. It just took me a long time to figure it out. I was always a Jewish woman. I sang in choir, celebrated the holidays, and made sure my children received a Jewish education in spite of the fact that they didn't want it. I never stopped being a Jewish woman. My Judaism was just hiding in plain sight. So what happened? I was ready, I was asked, and I said yes. We joined Or Kadash in late 2019. I was asked to join Sisterhood. I was ready, and I said yes. I was asked to be on the Sisterhood board, first of Or Kadash and then Kol Ami. I said yes. Carol Sack asked me to be her vice president, and whoops, I said yes. And during this time, my life became filled with the friendships of the most amazing, creative, and inspiring women. And more important, they made me feel amazing, inspiring, and alive, even during the pandemic. It is truly an honor and a privilege to be installed as president of Women of Kol Ami, and though my parents may be shaking their heads, I know they would be proud. In closing, I found a reading in the book Covenant of the Generations that I would like to share. Being part of this special sacred group of women allows me to share ideas that sustain and promote the ideals of sisterhood in the midst of the women of my community. I feel proud. I am blessed. I am a better woman because of these women who are my friends. I have an opportunity to encourage others to be the best that they can be as our great group builds connections. I feel the strength and bonds of women that link me to the generations before and yet to be. I feel at one with the matriarchs. Sisterhood gives me a sense of continuity to all the sisters who have led me to this place in this time. I am fortunate to call these women sisters. I am in awe of their commitment. I am grateful for this sense of family, Jewish family. This special sacred group of women teaches me about myself. They inspire me to be the best that I can be. Together we build mitzvah and memory and the future. I am so glad that, like Balaam, I took the time to notice and reroute my path. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, Adrian, and Mazal Tov and more power to you, and thank you for everything in advance.
Thank you.
It's really hard to estimate the amazing work that the auxiliary organizations of our community do, and speaking as someone on the professional staff, it just completely extends the capacity of those who work professionally here to do even more with the community. I do want to mention for those watching at home, if you'd like to add a name for healing, we'll recite our Misha Berach in a few moments, and so please now share that with us if you're watching on Zoom. We do want to mention a few folks who have been recently added to the healing list: the Mendez family, the Katz family, and the Brodsky family, all of whom recently suffered bereavements. And we also want to add the name of Sarah Siegel. From our online congregants, we should also add the name of Ralph Martin. Is there anybody in the room who'd like to add a name? Please, yes. Thank you. Thank you. Len. Thank you. Thanks, Len. Thank you. Thank you. Andy. Thanks. Rita. Thank you.
Daniel.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you. Sharon. Thank you. Rabbi. Thank you. Did I miss anybody? Okay, thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. We will recite the healing prayer on page 25. Please rise or sit as is your tradition.
Before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mi sheberach imotenu mekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shalema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Please be seated. I'm going to invite Amy Krause to join me on the bimah, and I'll explain why. We're starting to do something here our synagogue called Humans of Kol Ami. It will take lots of different forms, this idea of the humans of Kol Ami. The idea is to get to, come here, Amy. You don't need to. We actually, do you want one?
Do I need one?
It's up to you.
Okay.
I've got like an assortment of bar mitzvah boxes back there. Yeah, you're fine. But in addition, we just want to hear people's stories at Kol Ami. It's really important to build cohesion and empathy in a congregation. You need to know more about the people that are within these walls or watching online. And so part of that is certainly the brainchild of Ruth Reiter. You said to me, Ruth, listen, we've got all these amazing people at Kol Ami, and wouldn't it be great to hear a bit about them? Maybe they can tell their story from time to time. So I wanted to speak to Amy about a particular aspect of your life, Amy.
Don't know why.
Okay. Well, it came on recommendation. And it's specifically, we wanted to just spend a few minutes talking about your experience defending prisoners who are on death row. We could have chosen all different other aspects of your life, but we'll home in on that.
Very uplifting.
Okay.
Tonight.
It is. And, but just explain to folks how you got involved in law in general to start with.
Okay, but before I get there, I want to get this straight.
Yeah.
If I'm hearing you correctly,
Yeah.
I am the inaugural first human of Kol Ami. Is that right?
Well, I think many of us here have attained Homo sapien status, but
But that kind of makes
for the particular project, yes.
Does that not make me like Lilith?
Oh, okay, right.
And I got that from
That's
Michelle.
like a whole other
I got that from
shield.
Michelle Blumenberg. It wasn't me, but that was not my knowledge. But I'm happy to be here, and thank you. It's lovely to see I didn't expect such a big crowd, actually. I was kind of hoping I would just kind of fade into the woodwork, but apparently that's not going to happen.
No.
So I'll answer your question, which was why did I get into law? And I have to say that I really think the answer to that question lies in my Jewish upbringing, much of which happened right here at Temple Emmanuel. So, for example, Cantor Cohen was my bat mitzvah cantor right here on this bima in 1978. And if I heard Simon correctly, he might have been there. He's been here that long. Ruth Dickstein, who's sitting in the back, was my Sunday school teacher.
Nice.
And the Dickstein family and the families of Larry and Diana Haas, who are also here in the back. And I really apologize if I miss everyone, because I didn't, really look around. But we were all part of a chavara.
Right, okay. So just explain what a chavara is like.
Well, we were families that had similar age children, and we got together on a social basis. And so their children have been my close friends for all these years, and we have our generational friends, parents, children, and grandchildren. It's been wonderful.
Right, some chavaras go on for decades.
Yeah, I mean, we don't officially meet anymore, although Diana and Ruth and I have dinner once a month to this day.
Nice.
It's wonderful. So my Jewish upbringing really, when I think back to why I got into law, I have to attribute it to my Jewish upbringing because so much of Jewish youth grouping, which was a mainstay of my coming of age here, summer camp, Jewish summer camps and youth grouping, was about social justice.
Okay.
And in the 80s, there was a focus on Russian Jewry.
Yeah, the refuseniks.
The refuseniks, exactly. We had the silver bracelets, if you remember. I think at one point I told my parents I was going to go to Russia and marry someone to bring them back, and that didn't go over well.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I was in my 20s then, so I share somebody else's.
You didn't tell me about that when we were preparing for this.
I know, that's another story. But in any event, that's where I really started thinking about social justice, civil rights, religious freedom. And as I, started getting into my college years, the things that resonated most with me were my feminism and my Judaism. Okay. So I worked one summer at the National Women's Political Caucus in Washington, D.C., and I went on an Israel trip with AIPAC, and I really thought that I would go into politics, that I would make a difference by going into politics, and that to be an effective politician, having a law degree would be very useful. Okay. So I actually didn't go to law school with the intent of practicing law.
Right.
I thought I would go and then go off, somehow into politics. But when you graduate from law school, I got an undergraduate degree here at the U of A in Women's Studies. I went to Tulane Law School, and the day I graduated, my parents handed me my car payment book.
Okay.
So I judge from the laughter that some of you are old enough to remember what car payment books are. I doubt they exist anymore. I was like, oh, this is real. I actually have to get a job. So I'm going to practice law.
Okay.
And I thought it'd be fun to be a litigator. So what do young lawyers do to cut their chops in a courtroom? They get a job either as a prosecutor or a public defender. So I happened to get a job in the Pinal County Public Defender's Office. And I put 58,000 miles on my car in 22 months, and I had an incredible introduction to the world of criminal defense.
Wow.
So I went on after that to do a stint with the Pima County Public Defender's Office, and then 8 years in the United States Attorney's Office. So
But no politics.
no politics. So good thing, no politics. So I've litigated criminal cases on both sides of the aisle. I've been in state court and federal court. And when I left the U.S. Attorney's Office in 2004 and started working on my own, doing mostly appellate work,
Yeah.
appeals, criminal appeals, I'm sorry. So my work as an appellate lawyer since then has included representing men who are currently or have been on death row.
So how did they get into the first place? What was
Well,
the first thing that happened?
So to follow up on your point, I never went into politics, thank goodness, but I do still hope that I am making a difference through my professional work and my volunteer work, but happily not in politics.
And listen, by the way, I'm one of those hundreds of thousands of people who came through the youth group summer camp route. You know, I'm still going on summer camps now, and a completely formative part of my Jewish
Yes.
education.
Right.
Yeah. So tell us how, like the whole death row thing, how did that come
The
about?
whole death row thing, so that also wasn't intentional. I guess maybe that's like a theme in my life, that I end up places unintentionally. Right after I went into practice on my own, I got a call from a lawyer at a law firm in town, Waterfall Economitas. That lawyer is Kerry Sandman, if any of you know him. He's a wonderful lawyer and a wonderful person. And Kerry at that time was representing 4 men who are on death row, and he needed some assistance with research and writing. So I didn't know Kerry, and I didn't know anything about capital habeas work, but I knew how to do legal research, and I knew how to write a brief, and I had just opened my own practice, so I needed the income, and so I agreed. And Kerry became my mentor, and he became my friend. And within a year, I joined him as his co-counsel in those 4 cases. So
Were you worried about any aspect of that work going into it?
no,
Okay. Okay.
no,
Okay, you're bold.
no,
Fair
I
enough.
wasn't. You know, it was kind of a.
Well, just the responsibility that you have. I guess that's what I was getting at.
Yeah, it is a huge responsibility, and fortunately for me, I had somebody who was lead counsel. I was associate counsel. He
Okay.
was really a mentor in the true sense of the word, mentoring me through this process. Those 4 people who I started representing with Kerry, by the way, one we were successful in overturning his death sentence, but that was later overturned by a higher court. That man remains on death row today with another one of our clients. In both of those cases, the legal issues are around his sentence, not his guilt. The third client we represented died of cancer in 2016, and the 4th client was executed in December of 2013.
Okay. And were you there to see it?
I witnessed that execution.
Okay.
And it was the most profoundly disturbing experience of my life.
Okay.
I think about it today, and it is the only thing that makes me feel ashamed of our criminal justice system.
Okay, wow.
So I think there's a natural synergy between Jewish values and criminal defense, and that is not to the exclusion of prosecutors. We need wonderful prosecutors as well. I feel like I first learned about compassion and mercy and empathy and justice right here in this building. And I think that as Jews, we know what can happen when the government uses its laws to kill its citizens. So to me, this is a far greater danger than the actions of a single person, even the heinous actions of a single person. And what I've come to understand is that a person's culpability is much more complicated than you might think. So while I didn't go into capital defense work for philosophical reasons,
Right.
my experiences over the past 20 years have really solidified my commitment to people who are charged with capital crimes, and in doing so to defending the constitutional protections that help us all.
Fair enough. And it might be helpful just before we bring things to a close, just maybe tell one story to, so people can get in the room with you, as it were, with doing this kind of work.
Okay, it won't be the execution story because
No.
nobody needs to hear that.
No, not on Shabbos.
Yeah, no, another time. There are so many moments that I have, taken pause in what I have learned about other people's reality. One moment that may kind of exemplify my work is from 1996 to 2017, inmates on death row were housed in a unit that was built for disciplinary segregation. And so they were locked in their 9 by 10 foot concrete cells 23 hours a day.
So they didn't see anyone else?
They saw nobody else. Food was delivered to the cells. Even when they went out for recreation, it was in literally a cage,
Yeah.
and they were alone, in a cage that was maybe the size of half a pickleball court, I would say. They recreated by themselves. They were allowed other cells for showers 3 times a week. Even visits, if they were lucky enough to have family visits, those took place on like a phone bank like you would see on TV. And even legal visits were conducted in a private room, but the room had a divider, so lawyer and client were on opposite sides of a wall and a glass divider. So, and every time one of my clients left the cell for any of these reasons, he was belly chained and with leg irons and was escorted by 2 guards with hazmat suits. So he literally had no human contact.
But you actually eventually
I did.
got into contact with one of your clients. So how did that play out?
That happened when death row was moved after a lawsuit was settled, and the inmates there were given more of a normal kind of prison experience. So I happened to be there the very first day that visitation occurred in this new unit, and it was a contact visit, and I was standing in a room that had, just like you see on TV, a room with like metal picnic tables. And my client walked in, Eric Mann is his name, he's still on death row. He walked in the room, and it was like startling to see him walking unrestrained, and he wasn't escorted by 2 guards. There was a guard a few feet behind him, and we made eye contact, and we both realized that this was the first time in 11 years of monthly visits that we had occupied the same physical space. And it was palpable, it just felt different. And we hugged, and he cried, and he told me that in that moment he realized that all those years of not having any physical contact with any other person made him feel subhuman.
Okay, wow.
And that has just resonated with me.
Well, that's a powerful moment, but just to bring things to a close...
Please, they're saying please. Bring
No,
it to a close.
not at all, not at all. Just to give your opinion on the death penalty, and it doesn't matter if your opinion jives with other people's. We're in
sure.
a community, not a cult, so
Absolutely.
diversity of opinions is fantastic. And just from my point of view, I've always grown up on the rabbinic idea that even though biblically there are different ways of killing a human being if they've committed certain crimes, it's nevertheless, the rabbis say that if a court gives a capital sentence even once in 70 years, it's an overly harsh court. So that's what I've grown up with, but so where do you stand?
Yeah, and I really believe that reasonable minds can differ on difficult issues, and this is a difficult issue. So my perspective, my experience is obviously it should be obvious that I oppose capital punishment because I think it's morally wrong for the state to kill, the government to kill. And the risk of executing an innocent person is real, and it's too high a cost to pay, from my perspective. You can also argue that it's a very complicated process that drains our resources, and the data shows that the death penalty doesn't keep us safe. So just 2 weeks ago, and I think there was a story in the paper either today or yesterday about Barry Jones, who was on death row in Arizona for 29 years and was just exonerated and freed. And by the way, the dedicated and skilled lawyer behind that result was Kerry Sandman.
Okay, your person.
My guy, my person. Barry Jones was the 12th Arizona prisoner to be exonerated from death row since 1973. That's when the Supreme Court reinstated the death penalty. And he was the 192nd nationwide. So you may think it must be getting better over time. You know, things are getting better, things are getting fairer, but that's not so. In the last 5 years, there were 93 executions in the United States, and 16 people were exonerated. So if you do the math, it's 1 exoneration for every 5 executions. In my mind, that's 20% error rate, and that's a very high rate of error for an error that's irrevocable. So I don't believe there's a way to have a death penalty system that doesn't exclude innocent people, and I believe that 1 life is too many.
Right.
That error rate is too many. And then there's, of course, the issue of, well, then what do you say about, that's fine for people who may be innocent, but there are a lot of people who do commit these heinous crimes. And so we know, for example, that in 2017, Robert Bowers walked into the Tree of Life synagogue and took the lives of 11 Jewish worshipers.
Yeah, just been on trial just now.
The penalty phase is he was found guilty, and they're now in the penalty phase where the jury will be deciding between the death sentence and a life without parole sentence. And then, of course, an example from right here in Tucson was from January of 2011 when Jared Loughner took the lives of 6 people at Gabby Gifford's congressional event. So why do I oppose the death penalty for people in that situation? And it's because of this. What I've learned in the past 30 years is that even people who do horrible things, really, vile and inexcusable and heinous things, have some redeeming human value. For example, one of my clients who's currently on death row is a decorated Vietnam veteran. He was a Marine. He served 3 tours of combat during the height of the conflict in 1968 and 1969. And when he returned to the U.S., to the air base in the Marine base in Yuma, he was thrown from a military truck. He fractured his skull, and he was in a coma for 3 weeks. When he emerged from that coma, he did learn how to walk and talk, but he was forever changed because of his heroic service to our country. So most of my clients, like the one I just described, have organic brain damage. They have mental illness. They have addictions. They came from households where there was violence, early exposure to drugs and alcohol, poverty, trauma. I could go on and on. But I believe, Rabbi, that as a community, we are better off when we show compassion and mercy to other people. And I also believe that by treating the most vilified members of our society as worthy of living, that we convey a greater message that's one of tolerance and understanding and mercy and compassion and forgiveness. And I believe that those are values that make our diverse community stronger and better for all of us.
I really appreciate that. Yashar Koach and Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
And I'm hoping that other attorneys here will argue with you at Kiddush in a nice possible way.
You bet.
But also, it's just one of the stories that we're going to hear from congregants, not just on the Bimmer, but in different contexts around our congregation. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Shabbat Shalom. Now, the women of Kol Ami, the board of WKA has to be installed officially this evening. This is the main part of our menu. So I want to bring all of you up to the Bimmer, and I'm going to call you up by name and come up when you hear your name. Adrian Flynn and Carol as president, Carol Sack as immediate past president, Marsha Abelson, Vice President, Denise Friends, membership, Lee Serwitt, membership, Lee Golden as Treasurer, Renee Adelstein, Recording Secretary, Bonnie Jacobson, Judaica Shop, Harriet Cronman, Historian, Norma Cohen, WRJ Liaison, Social Action, Laurie Kassman, Programs, Dana Adler, Programs, Sharon Geiger, Correspondence Secretary, and Lainey Dierenfeld, Communications. Please, will you all join us up here on the bimmer?
I'm not saying anything. Carol is. Yeah, but right now? Sure, why not?
Okay. All right. Well, Adrian, come here. Wait, before we start, I better take this off.
I'm being pinned. I remember that from high school, I think.
Okay, we'll leave that there. Well, today is my last day as president of the Women of Colomie.
Stop smiling.
Yeah. I can so vividly remember a few years ago when Dana came to me and asked me if I would be the vice president, just the way I had asked Adrian. And that this is when I belonged to Or Hadash, and it was the Or Hadash Sisterhood, and I had just become a member, and I was really impressed that they were really organized. They had this whole plan of succession and all these wonderful programs. And I thought, when you're vice president, a few years later you become president. And I thought, well, how hard can that be? They've got it all planned out. Little did I know that soon after that, we would get word at Or Hadash that both Or Hadash and Temple Emmanuel were going to move forward for the merger that we had talked about. And my job would be to merge the sisterhood of Or Hadash with the sisterhood of Temple Emmanuel. Well, we were very different. They operated, Temple Emmanuel operated differently than the sisterhood at Or Hadash, and they had a different history and different structures than we did. And so we began by merging our leadership, the leadership team at Temple Emmanuel with the leadership team, the board at Or Hadash, and that created the first Women of Colomie board, a merge board. So, there were some bumps in the road along the way, and every now and then there's a bump even now, but what we learned is that we could work together and that we can work things out. And we formed a much stronger Women of Colomie sisterhood. And I have tried to lead by example, to listen with intention, and have open communication so we can grow together, and we have. As I look at all of you, our seasoned board members and our new board members, I see a cohesive group of women who are forging a path toward the future. And so it has been my honor and privilege to serve with all of you and to pass the torch to Adrian. I had a recent leave of absence, and Adrian stepped in as the acting president. And she really blew me away with how she just stepped right in there, and she has great leadership skills. So I am so happy to be passing the torch to you, Adrian. I am not going far. My new role is as a member of the membership committee. So if you are not a current member of Women of Colomie, you will be hearing from me. And so I thank all of you for your support during my term. And I am now going to turn the reins over to Adrian, and I'm going to start by, I can't pin you and hold the microphone. But this is, I need Lori to tell everyone what the pin represents from the Women of Reformed Judaism.
It represents a portion of the YES Fund, which is Youth Education and Special Projects. And as a part of that, we, with WKA, work with WRJ. Anything that we donate to the YES Fund and the Lifeline specifically goes to a very special savings account that allows them to give scholarships to rabbis, to cantors, to young people that are going to schools. It helps our youth, which is what we as WKA really wanted to do. So we purchased this Lifeline pin so that we can pass it from sisterhood president to sisterhood president. So Carol has it, and now Adrienne has it, and it's a lovely pin. Ask her about it because it really means something special. And we will, in the future, have some Yes Fund activities that we hope you'll come to for us.
Okay. Dana, according to this, you're on.
It's my turn now. So, Arlene Kuderoff, would you please come up here? Your last swan song. We want to thank Arlene for being our recording secretary for the last 2 years. She did it with grace, with efficiency, timeliness, and most of all, humor. If you've ever been in a room with this young lady.
This is how I ended up in sisterhood. She also conned me onto that job.
I'm going to get a bad rap here.
I relate to your problems.
So anyway, on behalf of this board,
Oh, thank you.
we thank you for all your work. Thank you. And then, Adrian, as you ascend to your new position, we hope you use this on a regular basis. And it's not a gavel. You may open it and you may share with. We'll put it up here. This is not going to be a 2-hour service, I promise you.
It's heavy, whatever it is.
And it's glass.
Oh, and it's glass, too. They tell me that now. Oh. Ooh. Is that the top? Oh, it's a bank.
It's a bank. It's a Sadaka box, Adrian.
It's a Sadaka box. It's been a long day. It's a Sadaka bank.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. And last but not least, Carol, to our leader, our light, our friend, and you've just done it all, and you have added so much, not only to sisterhood, but to this congregation. Carol is also going to be officially joining the Board of Trustees as a trustee, and she's very actively involved in some very important aspects, and then all these. So thank you. Rabbi, you got it.
Do the oath.
Okay, little miscommunication.
Gather around.
Okay, let's gather around here. This is the oath that we are taking as board members, the oath of leadership. Yes. The dreams and visions of our matriarchs inspire me today. Throughout our history, we as sisters have supported, comforted, and championed one another. As the sisters who came before me, I pledge to represent women of Kol Ami as the collective voice and presence of women in our communities. Together, we will work to enhance the quality of Jewish life and to ensure a future for progressive Judaism. I accept the duties of the office I now assume. I shall dedicate myself to these duties without fear of favor and with unyielding integrity. This is my pledge freely given, upon which I ask God's blessing. Amen.
Amen. We offer you the following blessing to finish this ceremony.
יברכך אדוני וישמרך.
May God bless you and keep you.
יאר אדוני פניו אליך ויחונך.
May God's face shine upon you and be gracious to you.
יישא אדוני פניו אליך וישם לך Shalom.
May God turn towards you in tenderness, give you the gift of wholeness, completeness, and peace.
Amen.
As we near the end of the service, those watching at home, if you'd like to add a name for Kaddish, now would be the time if you're on Zoom. And Aleinu can be found on page 64. Please rise.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
Please be seated for a moment before Kaddish. Before we recite the prayer, we should mention those who were laid to rest this past week. In doing so, by the way, I've been away seeing family. Just want to pay tribute to Cantor Cohen and our Erev Cantor Sarah Bolt. Cantor Cohen in particular this week, who supported the families of the following: Rhoda Mendez, mother of Irving, Louis, Robert, grandmother of Jacob, Justin, Michael, Joshua, Lainey and Lila, great-grandmother of Sophie, Isaac, Abigail, Eve and Tanner, sister of Claire, Joan Katz, wife of Jay, mother to Devon and Wendy, grandmother to Tylee and Kayla, Fred Brodsky, husband of Joyce, father to Joel, and those who died in the past month: Jeffrey David Cooper, Judy Rubin, Shannon Marie Leck, Joe Riley, Linda Greenberg, Linda Capin Gross, Shelby David Silverman, Mary Hahn, Henry R. Mandel, Betty Orman, David Aslauer, Ann Cohn, Rachamim Ben Sarah, and those whose yard sites are observed of this Shabbat: Margaret Auspitz, Morris Banowitz, Bonnie Lynn Barreras, Helen Baskin, Richard Belkin, Renee Bonnie, Norman Brown, Thomas Patrick Burns, Mark Capin, Rose Chait, Beth Clare, Carolyn Clark, Anna Cole, Benjamin Dixon, Richard Fife, Mayor Framer, Donald Golden, Harry Goodman, Yetta Hardman, Jack Israel, Pearl Joseph, Bennett Kaliski, Louis Kaplan, Sylvia Kaskell, Eric Castle, Helen Krasner, Toby Kuteroff, Morton Langsfeld, Edith Levine, Sandra Levinson, Morris Lutvak, Jenny Marwell, Marie Mast, Elka Matlick, Ruth Myers, David Olitsky, Judy Portner, Louis Posner, Ira Lee Riddle, Maya Aaron Rodkoff, Sol Rosen, Rose Rosenfeld, Leah Rothschild, Henry Rubin, Raymond Russell, Irene Sava, Dorothy Dottie Sire, Pamela Schapper, Beatrice Schwartz, Louis Shabason, Esther Shepherd, Sarah Schufro, Audrey Simon, Sam Stein, Bess Tobin, Leah Vogel, June Wallace, Jacob Woolman, Maya Weinman, Jack Weinstein, Goldie Weinstock, Leonard Weintraub, Henrietta Whitehill, Charles Chuck Whitehill. If there's anyone in the room who wants to add a name for Kaddish, please do so now by making yourself known to me. Thank you so much. Would everyone else please rise to support the mourners as we recite the Kaddish on page 68. Yitgadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Ba'amad ivrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayedecho Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala uvizman kariv ve'imru.
Amen.
Yehei Shemei Rabbah mevarach le'olam alalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'a v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitada v'yitale v'yitalal. Shemei dekudusha brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata. Damiran ba'alma v'imru.
Amen.
Yehei shalom rabba min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru.
Amen.
Oseh shalom bimromav. Hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru.
Amen. Our closing song is on page 91, and I would like to invite all of the board members of WKA, outgoing and incoming, to come up and grab a Kiddush cup.
And the women dancing with their timbrels followed Miriam as she sang her song. Sing a song to the one whom we've exalted. Miriam and the women danced and danced the whole night long. And Miriam was a weaver of unique variety. The tapestry she wove was one which sang our history. With every strand and every thread she crafted her delight. A woman touched with spirit, she dances for the light. And the women dancing with their timbrels followed Miriam as she sang her song. Sing a song to the one whom we've exalted. Miriam and the women danced and danced the whole night long.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen l'chaim.
Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. We give thanks to God for bread.
Our voices rise in song together as our joyful prayer is said. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.